Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Coffee with Coaches podcast. I'm your regular host, Kevin Stafford. And today I have with me Christine Blosdale. Anything but blah. Christine is an international #1 Amazon bestselling author, a personal development coach, and a globally recognized expert in podcasting and radio. She's an award-winning media personality with over 25 years of experience, a radio programming and podcasting development consultant, and was recently named an icon of influence, which I'd love to know a little bit more about what that's about, but that sounds fantastic. Christine, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So before I ask you about what icon of influence means, actually, you know what? Let me ask you about that first before we get cracking. What is an icon of influence? I meant to look this up earlier. I totally forgot.
Yeah, well, just a couple of years ago, I was actually handpicked from the New Media Summit, the folks who put the New Media Summit together in California. And they were looking at the top 40 podcasters who had an influence and who kind of shook up the world a little bit, or the podcasting world a little. And they had chosen me as one of the 40 to go and speak at their annual convention. And so they gave me that moniker and I said, you know what, that's kind of classy. I like that. I'm going to use that again. So I use that in reference to basically what we can do, and not just like an influencer as in, Instagram influencer or things like that, but how we can influence people by being a leader and by sharing our wisdom and our wit with the world and inspiring others to do better and to do great things in the world.
As I expected, I love it. That is pretty freaking awesome. Let's roll back the clock a little bit to how you got your start in coaching. And I like to think of it because usually when people are telling me how they got their start in coaching, it was a process of discovery. Like they kind of figured out that they already were a coach, or they were already sort of on that path and just kind of committed to it. So talk a little bit about your superhero origin story, as it were.
I like that. I love that. The superhero origin story. Well, when I graduated high school, I didn't know, so many people didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had picked the major and gone to college to become a teacher. And so I thought, well, I'll be a teacher. Now in Los Angeles, when you get out of college with your beautiful Bachelor of Arts degree, and you want to become a teacher, they send you to the craziest, worst schools. They pay you absolutely nothing. And I saw that and I said, no, that's not going to be my future. And so I kind of put teaching at that time, I put it on the back burner, and I just explored being a young person and growing up. And I moved to San Diego, and I was a personal fitness consultant for a while because it was just a knack that I had, right? I would say things and people would follow me. And so I did the personal fitness coaching thing for a while. And eventually I found myself back in Los Angeles and on a radio station. I actually volunteered at a nonprofit radio station. In the beginning, I volunteered because I was passionate about the programming that they had, because it wasn't commercial. It wasn't, you're listening to WBA. It was really heart-centered, thoughtful analysis of what was going on. And this was right after 9/11, when we all, were like, kind of what's going on in the world. And I wanted to know more. So I began volunteering there. And then eventually that worked into a paid gig where I was a producer. And then that fateful moment, it's kind of like those Hollywood movies where the star breaks a leg or, is in a coma and the understudy has to go on. So I had to go on the mic one day and do a show during prime time. And once that on-air light went on, I don't know, something happened inside me and I lit up myself and I just spoke from my heart, and the audience in Los Angeles, which was a large audience, felt it and resonated with it. And I started my career there, and I was at the radio station for 20 years being on air. And the art of the interview is something that you can't really teach, but you can show people some things that you want to do and some things that you don't want to do. And so after my career in radio, of course, I started my own podcast because I was thinking in terrestrial radio, you do a great interview, it goes out over the airwaves and it's gone. And I had some amazing people that I wanted to share and preserve their stories. So I moved into podcasting. And then eventually I said, I think I can teach this to people. I think I can show them how to interview people, how to communicate through the voice, and more importantly, how to have the heart speak through the voice. And so that's kind of my specialty. And now I'm coaching people all around the world on how to have a podcast and vodcast, which is the video version of the podcast. And I love what I do. I love my clients. Absolutely.
So fantastic. I just love that. I mean, of course, that one moment, that opportunity, it always feels like, I love the way you described it as almost like a light going on in you, like a literal, like a mirroring of the on-air light. And that's in one way or another, whether you can listen to the terms that people will use to describe it, a light going on, a light bulb, a dawning, a new day, things like that. It's like that terminology. It's always like a light that just illuminates and really makes clear. It's like, oh, I am doing this. I am this. I'm going to do this. This is going to be great. And then I can turn back around, and I love that step that you take where you're like, I want to teach people how to do this. And the acknowledgement that there's certainly a knack to it. There's definitely something that you kind of just have. There's like a charisma there, but there are so many tools and techniques that can be taught that can allow you to identify and express your, for lack of a better term, inner light, not to make it sound too inspirational, but
not too unicorny. Yes, no, it's a combination of that light. And then also what I work off of, and I do this with my coaching, I do this with my public speaking as well, is I have the goosebump factor. And like right now I have full on goosebumps down my arms, down my back. And so when I have goosebumps, that means that's whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, my higher self, whatever. That is an energy, a force that's saying, yes, this is good. This is something to pay attention to. So when I have the goosebumps, that is something that I pay attention to and I run with it. And that's what I got when I had that on air, the on air light going off, and you're in a zone. And when you're in it, and athletes talk about this, when you're in that zone, you're almost in a parallel world where everything that you need is right at your disposal. That the person next to you who's running and they're neck and neck, for some reason they trip over their shoelace or something happens, that you're in a zone. And when, as a coach, when you can get your client in that zone of either creativity, or if they're producing something, or they're sharing their wisdom or their humor, when you're watching that unfold, that's payment alone. It is the best feeling in the world. And I think that's a great attribute as well, is not having an ego. As a coach, I've seen other coaches, and bless them, they have a very strong ego. But for me, it's all about the client. It's all about the person that you're working with. And the same thing for podcasting. It's all about the audience. It's not about you. And the same thing with a radio audience. Again, it's all about them and what they're getting out of it.
I love the way you describe the goosebump feeling, because I often find myself, at least in recent years, considering like the power of a yes and a no, and that feeling of a full body yes, when your entire body, your whole being is almost vibrating with yes. Like it's, and the goosebumps is a really great way to describe it, because you get them all up and down your body, and it's like, and they're contagious too. And as a coach, it's one of the things that I feel like you're saying, like, bless the hearts of those with the big egos, but the coaches who are there and help someone to achieve their full body yes, those goosebumps are contagious. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah, I got more goosebumps on my goosebumps. Goosebumps on top of goosebumps. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts of your coaching practice. Are you more one-to-one? Do you have like any kind of group coaching that you do, or masterminds? What's your excited approach to how you engage with your audience and your clients?
I like both. I like all approaches. I like group coaching, and I like group coaching, and I like one-on-one. Of course, the one-on-one, the private personal coaching is where I can really customize the work that I do. So if I'm doing a podcast coaching program, a VIP program with someone, We can go through the branding, the feel of it, the theme, the narration and all of that, right? So it's very customized. But I like group coaching as well. And I like presenting to groups. I just recently spoke to a group of, oh my goodness, it was about 50 women, international women. And a lot of them were like CEOs and techies and everything like that. Brilliant women from around the world. And what I liked about that is that I could feel their energy, much like when you're speaking to an audience, when you're live and you can feel that energy of the audience. I could feel the energy of the women that were in that event. And I just love it because you can drop little golden nuggets and you can get that immediate feedback from them. And so instead of just having one-on-one, you've got, here I had 50 amazingly talented women have the light bulbs go off and go, oh my gosh, for my business, I need to have a podcast. I need to have a YouTube channel, because you can be the best thing since sliced bread. And if you're hiding in a basement, nobody's going to know about you. You need to get yourself out there, right? You have to. And so I like them both. I like one-on-ones, and I like the group stuff as well.
I like, it's such a good distinction too, because there are a few things that are like that individual moment where you're deeply connected with someone, helping them to discover themselves and equip them to express themselves even better. And it's like, it's almost at both and it's equal to, but in a very different way, watching the light shine from behind the eyes of, 10, 20, 50, however many people out in an audience, as you're giving them nuggets and you're seeing it dawn on them. It's like, yes. Sorry, I get excited.
And it's powerful. And it is. And it's powerful to have people also realize all of a sudden that light goes off and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I could repurpose that. I can repurpose that podcast episode into a module for a course, right? I could repurpose that podcast episode for a chapter in a book. Many of my clients, we create their podcast so that each episode is a chapter in a book. One woman that I work with is just launching her book today. It's already a #1 bestseller in the United States. And a great deal of that is because she decided to use her podcast as a business builder and to think a little bit outside of the box of just having it be a audio podcast. So that's what's exciting to me, is when I see people fly,
Yeah. And I'm just my first thought was like, oh my. So you think about understanding, once it's like, I have to get out there, I have to have a podcast, YouTube. You think about all the different, for lack of a better word, content that you have to create, which is basically your presence, online. And it's like, it's time consuming and it could be a lot of work. And sometimes it can eat up a lot of your time, but there is a much easier way to go about doing that, a way that maximizes, like you were saying, when you took it from radio to podcasting, or like, it's just going out the one time into the ether and then it's out there, it's done. But whereas with the podcast, you've got this infinitely reusable resource that you can then turn into, repost the same podcast episode, and you have a follow-up episode, and you have the books, and you have course. I love the course idea. And I could feel like I'm thinking of this because you were talking about those female CEOs you were talking to, and my CEO brain kind of kicked in. I was like, oh, think of all the time I could save by getting so much more out of my podcast.
Absolutely. And here's the thing too, when you hit a nerve with people, and you'll, if you do a podcast show, and I do, like I said, I always coach all my clients to not just do the audio podcast, but to do the video version of it and to get it on YouTube. Why? Because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, owned by the first largest search engine in the world, right? #1. So that's where people are going. They're going there for answers. How do you fix a carburetor on a Volkswagen? How do you, grow a vegetable garden? How do you get over anxiety? How do you deal with a narcissist? And why I say that is because, and this is a testimony to having a podcast, especially a vodcast, 6 years ago, because my podcast is 6 years old this month. And the very, very beginning, when I first started doing my show, Out of the Box with Christine, I had done a series, 3-part series called My Interview with a Master Narcissist. It's kind of like the interview with a vampire type.
Yeah, I was going to say, good title, very evocative.
Yeah. Well, this narcissist basically decided to pull, kind of like a magician, pulling back the curtain and showing you how the narcissist operates, like how a magician does a trick, how they saw the woman in half. So I had him on the show, and the video is nothing because he didn't want to be on camera. It's just slides, really, like, just single images, not even video images. It's just static images. Well, that show, the first one, has now close to 300. I haven't even checked, like 300,000 plays. When I look at my episodes in podcast and in the audio podcast and also the video, still ranking in the number 1 and 2 spot is that interview that I did 6 years ago. In other words, people today are getting healing, and a lot of it are women who are victims of narcissists, but it happens to men as well. And they're writing me letters still saying, thank you for this, because I thought I was going crazy. I thank you so much, because I did not know how to deal with my narcissistic husband or my parent. And now I understand I need to cut and run. I need to leave. I can't change them. And so just don't ever underestimate what you're doing, and realize that can be so powerful that years and years later, it still can be your most listened to podcast, your most watched YouTube video, and it has legs. So that's why I want to encourage people. Don't just say, oh, I did that a long time ago. You might want to either repurpose it or put it into a book or a movie. You never know, right?
You never know. Yeah. I love that. It's like, I'm feeling just warm thinking about how you never, and the way this just occurred to me is you never know when you're going to say the most important thing you're ever going to say, or record the most important thing you're ever going to record, or share the most important thing you're ever going to share. So why not make it shareable for all time? Why not keep it out there, keep it up, let it be accessible, let it be findable? Because you never really know. You might not think of it in the moment, but it could be the thing that has the most lasting influence, has some of the most power that you'll ever come across. And so don't feel like you have to know that what you're about to do is going to be that level. Just do it. Try your best to do everything that you can to make it as good as you can, and let people who need it find it when they need it. That's exactly. I'm sorry. That just spoke to me very, very powerfully. I love that. I absolutely love that.
I'll send you the links.
Yeah, send me the links. And I was just going to say, like, we've already been chatting for a while now. I should probably wrap this up. Where can people find out more about you? I know you've got the show that's been going for, what did you say, 6 years now, this month sometime?
Yes. Celebrating 6 years. I can't believe it's gone by so fast. So I have Out of the Box with Christine. It's the podcast for conscious entrepreneurs. You can find it on all your major platforms, as well as, of course, YouTube, Spotify, blah, 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 blah. And I have a group coaching every 2 weeks. We meet and we go over everything. It's not just about podcasting. It's about publicity, promotion, using words, how to interview, how to look good on camera, all those different things. We just did a class on TikTok and how to create TikToks and use it as a business tool as well. And that's the Boss AF Bootcamp. And that's available at bossafbootcamp.com. It's a membership and we have a blast. But if you want more information about me, you can go to christineblosdale.com. And the way to spell it, we'll have it in the show notes, I'm sure. It's just christineblosdale.com.
I thank you so much for being here. I'm like, I find I've got like maybe a half dozen other like questions.
You can have me back on, Kevin. You can have me back on at any time.
I got to respect the format, because the short and sweet seems to work well for everybody. But I have this almost itch to do one of those like 3-hour deep dives with you. So yeah, I think at the very least I'll have you back on sometime later this year for my own personal edification. This was fantastic for me. I hope it was at least half as good for you.
Absolutely. And I'd love to invite you. You can come on my show anytime, or also if you would like to speak at the boot camp, you're more than welcome, because I love your energy, Kevin. Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing energy with me today. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And to the audience out there, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.